Like I said, his behaviors, I think, are part of the issue. He can match, but due to his behaviors interfering, it has not been consistent. And so I wanted to match it specifically where he is at. So hopefully my goal is to get him at a 4 once we can get some of those behaviors down. Imitation's really weak. That's something that's probably the biggest one I learned. I don't know why I haven't been doing more imitation with him. He has very limited imitation skills, and I know how important imitation is. If a kid can imitate, they can pretty much learn anything. And that's something that this really taught me, was like, all right. And in fact, next week I already introduced a nonverbal imitation program. So that way we can start getting this rolling, because I think we'll see progress in other areas once I can get him to start imitating more. Other living skills, really struggles with that, but we're moving in that direction. He didn't have as much daily living skills. Now I've been introducing that, and he's been mastering them pretty quickly. I'm not sure if Jamie's in here. That's his occupational therapist. She's been working on it as well, and I believe she would agree how much progress he is starting to make. So I think this one we're going to definitely see an increase in eventually. Tolerating, as I talked about, not good at that. Sorry, I'm like trying to read this. It's so small. Naming and describing, he does really well with receptive, but he really, really struggles with expressive. His device is super aversive. Hannah, you can probably attest to that. Getting him to like his device has definitely been a roller coaster. So once again, I think that's a barrier that if we can get him to start to like his device a little bit more, we would see a big increase in him labeling things and identifying. And then following directions, he can follow for the most part like one-step directions. Usually he needs help if it's multi-step. And then answering questions is limited. And then problem behavior, we put very low, because like I said, his problem behavior has been his biggest thing right now, that I think is interfering with some of his progress in other areas.
All right. Thanks, Cassidy. Okay, so that was a really good overviously, by the way.
I felt like it was super detailed, so my bad if I didn't.
No. It was very, very good. Actually, I was like, sorry, Cassidy, could you bring it back up? I'm so sorry. I'm like, should have told you. I'm like, so that way we can kind of all discuss it as a group a little bit. Especially based off of the last training that we got. Geez, sorry guys, I can't talk today. Based off of the last training that we did with your introduction to the Essential for Living, what do we know about that blue area? What is the blue area?
Sorry.
The Essential 8.
Okay, and what does that mean?
Those are the prerequisite skills in order to be successful in all the other areas.
Right. Those are your must-have skills, right? Mm-hmm. So looking at the assessment that Cassidy did, which was great, I wanted you guys just to do the Essential 8, kind of look at that first. So those other skills that are behind the Essential 8, what skills are those?
Communication.
Well, yeah, but what are they known as? So if you're blue, the blue area you're Essential 8 are your must-have. What are those gray areas?
Nice to have, or good to have.
Oh yeah, that's what it is. Nice to have.
Those are your
should
have. Yeah. So you've got your must-have, which are Essential 8, which Cassidy is absolutely right. Those are your prerequisite skills, right? Those are your foundation skills. Like that is what every learner needs to have in order to basically have a happy and successful life, as Patrick McGreevy says. Your gray area, those are your should have. So what we know about, so looking at this assessment for Cassidy's learner, what do we know so far based off of, I guess, what we have learned already with the Essential for Living in the quick assessment? What do you guys think?
That JC does not have the Essential 8, the must-have skills to be successful.
Good. What else?
And those should be probably focal points of development in the treatment process.
Good. So then what would that mean as far as developing your goals? Like basically, where would you start with developing your goals?
Maybe looking at what he struggles with the most.
Okay. Yep. So basically looking at where you want to focus your attention as far as teaching and prioritizing your goals would be those essential 8 skills. That's where you're going to start. Okay, so looking at your learners and like, and you're doing your goals and prioritizing, you want to develop your goals based off of those essential 8. Okay, once they start acquiring those skills, then you move on to that gray area, which is your should have. So, but your essential 8, those in the blue, those are where you want to put most of your focus. All right. Okay. Cassidy, did you run into any other areas that were confusing? Like, did you find it to be pretty easy for the most part?
I found it to be pretty easy for the most part, but like I said, I've had experience with it before, so I don't know if that made a difference in it.
Okay. All right. And then how long did it take you to do it?
Probably about 30, 40 minutes or so, but I was also chatting with the person. So I do think it would have been quicker if I wasn't actually having a conversation and actually talking about these things.
Okay.
So it didn't take very long.
All right, good. All right. Thanks, Cassidy. You did fantastic. That was, like I said, that was a really, really good explanation and an analysis of the assessment that you did. Who wants to share next? Anybody? All right, guys, don't make me call on you.
I'll pull Brielle's up.
Thanks, Ben.
I'll screen share with you. All right, here we go. All right, let me screen share. Where is it? All right, can everybody see it? Can you see it? Okay, oh, sorry. All right, my biggest concern, I had a lot of difficulty with the alternative methods of speaking. So, but
actually,
so Brielle,
sorry, Vince, we haven't even gone over that yet. Like, you weren't supposed to like do that part. Like, we haven't even gone over the alternative methods of speaking. Like, that'll be like within our next training. It's just your spoken. Okay. Yeah, just the spoken words is where you were to put your focus. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because the alternative methods of speaking is very confusing. So,
yes. Okay. Well, so with Brielle, I followed the criteria by scrolling down. I mean, I found it took me about probably 30, 45 minutes to complete. I did 2 different clients. Everything was pretty clear. I was definitely spending a little bit more time on the completing daily living skills related to health and safety, and specifically tolerating situations related to health and safety. Just making sure I'm clear on what that criteria was, and how to kind of space it out on, or how to document like which daily living skills the client is doing. So pulling up the pants, washing hands, putting away their managing their own materials and things like that. So that's how I kind of summed it up. Brielle, I scored her at a 2 for completing daily living skills related to health and safety. And that more so pertained to brushing her teeth, managing her toileting routine, which she attempts to do, but it's just not as effective as it should be. But mostly everything else is pretty easy to kind of score. What I did find was she scored high on, like as you see, 4 different categories in the essential 8. So I found that I need to really work on her tolerating, accepting no and removal of and during her transitions. But what I did find to be encouraging, it seems that I'm right on track with, because I just developed a new counter treatment plan and goals, and these are the specific areas that I was targeting. So it made me feel a lot better.
All right, good.
Mhm. Yeah, I didn't have any questions about anything else.
All right. All right. Do you guys have any questions specifically on this? Or I guess on Vince's case, on his assessment? Nope. Good. Okay. So we've got Vince. All right. Okay, who else wants to share?
I can go.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Brenna.
So I did mine for Joey. And I kind of worked on this with Sonia because she also knows Joey really well. Yeah, I thought it was pretty easy. I mean, there were maybe a couple where I was kind of like between two. And I just, part of me didn't know if I should just do a one where like you click both, or that was like the only part I was kind of confused on. Because there's a couple I feel like he could have maybe gotten the 4, like in some situations. So, but yeah, I didn't mark him for anything for 4. But I think he did pretty well overall. He scored pretty high, except for some of the safety ones. I've noticed that he kind of struggles with.
When did you get these?
So I would probably start off with more of the safety things and completing health and safety routines. To definitely feel like he needs some more supervision for those. But since everything else was around 3, yeah, so I'd probably start with these 2.
And what type of foods are you looking for?
All right. Do you guys have any questions for Brenna?
Okay.
Any comments? Nope. Okay. All right. Does anybody else want to share?
I will if you want me to.
All right. Go for it, Lisa.
Okay. Sorry, hang on. I got to share my screen. Okay, this is the one I did for a little guy who's about, he's 10 years old. And we have a lot of fairly severe verbal and physical aggressions from him, or at least we used to. And I think one thing that I found really interesting about this is thinking about where he might have scored on some of these a year ago versus where he does now. We did improve a lot of his ability to accept no, and we did improve a lot of his ability to give up desired items and to transition to things that are less preferred. And we have seen a significant reduction in behaviors. So, you know, without even really knowing we were doing it in this context, it really has helped by focusing on those 2 things to really reduce those behaviors. So yeah, he's a kiddo who he can request almost anything. He'll tolerate waiting for something, but once he has it, he doesn't want to give it up, and he does not want to be told that he can't have something very well. if he requests it for a longer amount of time. So yeah, so he's definitely got a few things that we need to work on here, and working on improving that ability to wait for things, and to, I think especially giving up those reinforcing objects and being able to tolerate waiting until he can get them again is the big place where I'm going to focus with him.
All right. And then how did it go for you? Did you find it to be easy? Was there anything confusing for you? Like anywhere you got stuck?
To be honest with you, I did it on all of my clients, and I did have a hard time with some of my higher functioning kids and some of my younger kids. Like I felt like it was really difficult to apply these ideas to, for instance, Cooper, because he's 4, and it's just, he's so young to be able to tell some of these things yet. But with this actual client, I didn't think it was difficult. It took me probably about a half an hour per kid to do.
Great. Great. So now, based off of our last training, guys, for some of those kiddos, and I know probably a lot of you don't know Lisa's kids, what do we remember as far as determining if the Essential for Living is an appropriate assessment for them or not? Do you guys remember the criteria for that?
Appropriate for everyone.
It is, but I thought we talked about if they're early learners and they're making progress with the VB map, we should stick to that. And then look at this if we don't see them making progress any further or they start to drop off.
Yep, perfect. What else?
I totally agree with that. I just did it because I wanted to see, like, as a brand new thing to me, how it would apply to people. And
yeah,
it definitely made it very clear that, you know, the ABLES or peak is definitely where I need to be with those other kiddos.
I agree, Lisa, because my kids are all 3 or 4. I did it for the purpose, but it was very, well, they're such early learners. So I feel like it's not an accurate picture of their true skill set at this time.
Yep, and that's okay. Yeah, that's okay, Lisa, that you did it. I mean, that's great, because the more that you do it, the more you get comfortable with it. Because again, within the Essential for Living handbook, he does recommend that you get really comfortable with actually completing the quick assessment, like especially if you're new to it, before you move on to the skill deficits. Because you think those study guides were intense. Once we actually start getting into the actual assessment portion of the skill deficits, that's where all those like abbreviations, things like that, that you guys learned about, that's where that's going to come into play. So it was really great that you get, or I guess it's really good that you get comfortable with doing that assessment portion. And if you have to do it on your clients, on all your clients to really get comfortable with it, that's okay. All right, Lisa. Yeah.
Based on like my experience with it, the one thing I really liked about EFLs was the problem behavior. So I know like any kids, like even a younger kid, so maybe they don't fit necessarily the whole EFLs, but like accepting no, the tolerance, the waiting, stuff like that. I know, or like accepting removal of reinforcers or transitioning, stuff like that. I know in the past, I really liked using the EFL skills just strictly for behaviors, because I know like the ABLES and stuff doesn't, I know VB map does a little bit more, but it doesn't necessarily focus primarily on those things that interfere with them learning new skills later on down the road.
Exactly, because it's more of a developmental assessment tool to use. So it's not necessarily going to, and the same thing that with the ABLES too, it's not necessarily going to put more of a focus like on that problem behavior area like the Essential for Living would. So yes, that is actually a good observation.
Also, if I can add, with the accepting no portion, I'm not sure how many people in the center or use the word no during our therapy session. So I did some direct testing to see how our client would respond to it and trying to get my scoring criteria. And I was surprised. I mean, she accepted it. So so it was pretty good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I feel
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lisa.
I was just going to say, I just feel like this really plugs a hole in my arsenal of assessments to really getting, because my clients range in age from, as of today, 2 all the way up to 19. So it really helps me to be able to get some of those gaps in the skills that those older kids who are getting ready to transition more are going to need.
All right, good. All right, anybody else? Nope. Okay. All right, well, I'm gonna go on and kind of go over the vocal profiles with you guys. And then have you score vocal profiles for your clients. And then for the next Skinner box meeting, for those who haven't shared their client yet, I'll ask that you bring that client with you and share. Because I want to make sure, one, before we really move on to the skill deficit portion of the assessment, that you guys really have a firm grasp on doing this and what each one actually means when you're scoring it. So that way we don't leave anybody behind. So before I move on to that section, do you guys have any questions? No? All right. Okay. So then we are going to start with learning about the methods of speaking and choosing an alternative method of speaking. So within the assessment that you're doing, we have what is called the vocal profiles. Right. So within your vocal profiles, these are used to assist with selecting, confirming, and maintaining a method of speaking. All right. So when we look at your vocal profiles, there are typically 6 of them. All right. And within these 6 profiles, you want to align your liner with one of these profiles to help you determine whether to select saying words, or that vocal language as your primary method of speaking, or is it better for you to select an alternative method of speaking? So examples of alternative methods of speaking might consist of like sign language, using a picture exchange communication system, using an AAC device. It could also be using, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Big Mac buttons. So basically they're just big buttons, like where you can record your voice and the learner can just tap it to request for something and out comes like vocal output. So also aligning your learner with one of these profiles will also help you determine goals, as we've kind of went over already, what your plan of action should be for meeting the goals, and recommending an allocation of resources. So with your Essential for Living, and it will give you resources relative to saying words and or an alternative method of speaking. All right, so first we have your vocal profile 1. So if you guys notice the assessment tool that you downloaded, the copy of it, down the bottom, there is a tab that says like your vocal profiles. So that's where you will find each one of the vocal profiles that we're going to go over. All right, so if we look at vocal profile 1, then your vocal profile 1, these are your learners that exhibit spontaneous and understandable spoken words by both familiar and unfamiliar listeners. So basically that means if someone has a client and I'm a novel behavior technician or a novel instructor in general, just going in and working with this client, and they can spontaneously request for something that they want. And it might not even be only one word, but I can understand that, then they're probably going to fall into that vocal profile 1 area. All right. It is okay if they make a few sound errors, but you kind of get the gist. I'm like, or you can really understand what it is that they're asking for. Okay. So they're able to make requests. They're able to maybe like name and describe items, you know, activities, places, and people. So it doesn't have to be all of those, but you know, are they able to tact items? Maybe some activities, maybe some people, like I recognize and I can say, I'm like, that's mom, that's dad, or that's Miss Becca, or that's Miss Lisa, that's Miss Sam. Can they answer questions or participate in conversations? So some of your introverbals. So can your learner emit some intraverbal language? All right. They also exhibit controlled egoic responses. So basically your controlled egoic responses are that they're able to repeat words or phrases when you instruct them to do so, and they cannot repeat the directive. So an example of that is if I'm working with a child and I tell the child, I'm like, say car, what should their response be?
Car.
Car, right. It's not if I say car and they repeat back to me, say car. No, that's not a controlled echoic response. Okay, so you guys clear on that? So do you kind of have a really good idea of vocal profile 1? I feel like that one's kind of the easy one. All right, so within your vocal profile 1, your overall goal is to work on increasing their repertoire of requests. So I'm trying to think of a really good example. Actually, some of you guys aren't familiar with actually the Rainforest classroom over here. Like they would probably fit into a vocal profile 1, but as we've already kind of determined, like they're better off staying with the VB map assessment tool than they would be for the essential for a living. But Lisa, can you describe one of your clients as far as maybe their vocal profile goes? Like what is their current language abilities in that classroom?
Well, if I went with AM, he pretty much has a completely typical style of speaking. He can do all of the things that you've listed here. He can make clear requests that anyone would understand. He can name and describe almost anything that's age appropriate. He answers questions, participates in conversations. If I asked him to, you know, give me any kind of echoic response, including phrases, he would be able to do so. I don't know, is there anything else you want to know?
Nope, that's perfect. That's perfect. So can you guys actually think of a client then that you have that maybe Essential for a Living would be appropriate for them as far as an assessment tool to really, really focus on that might fall in a vocal profile 1? Yeah, perfect. I'm like, Vince, I'm like, you're shaking your head. Which classroom?
I'm thinking Oliver.
Okay, yep.
Because he meets,
Yeah,
you know, each one.
yeah, that's actually a really, yes, that is actually a really, really good one. Can you kind of describe his language abilities a little bit for everybody?
Yes, he will emit spontaneous vocal requests up to a range of 3 to 4 or 5 words, depending on motivation. If he's unable to identify what he wants, he will, he will echo the response in order to receive that item. So his imitation skills are good. He will answer questions, specifically personal information questions, or just questions related to his wants and needs, or even novel questions, and completing intraverbal fill-ins. He tags familiar people, peers, places. So he definitely meets all of those criteria.
Great. Okay, thanks, Vince.
No
All right. So again, looking at your vocal profile 1, if you have a learner that fits into this area, your goal is to still work on increasing their repertoire of requests. Okay. Also increasing their tags. their ability to answer questions and within functional context while teaching them to kind of participate in functional conversations. All right, so hold on one second. Sorry, guys. Sorry, poor lady was staring at the door.
Yeah, I have a question.
All right, guys. So,
Tiffany,
yes.
I have a question. Sorry, you didn't have your headphones on.
No, I'm so sorry. Like my food actually just got here and I needed to grab it real quick. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You're good. So this is strictly, would this strictly be pretty much for clients that are actually verbal, not those with the device? That would be more the alternative method of speaking. Okay, because I have a good amount of clients that are completely nonverbal. So
yes, but now I don't want you to really focus on too, like when we think of verbal, focusing on I guess like Lisa's description of her client. Yeah, he would fall under a vocal profile 1. But we may have some early learners who do really do really well. Like maybe they don't spontaneously request for items that aren't within their immediate view, but on occasion they'll spontaneously request for something such as like a cookie or Skittles, something like that. But you're working on mans with them and you see that they want something like a book, for example, and you say book. And they say book. And they can pretty much reliably verbally imitate anything that you say. They still might fall under a vocal profile 1. So even though they're not using full words or phrases, things like that, they're able to echo anything that you ask them to. Does that make sense? So, but yes, but with your AAC device, I'm like, if they are pretty much nonverbal, they fall under more so where they just make noises or sounds, but they're using an AAC device currently, then they're using some type of alternative method of speaking.
cool. So would we just typically skip this section then if our client only does vocalizations and no other vocal communication outside of that without their device?
No, you would still do that. Like every single learner that you have is going to fall under one of these vocal profiles, regardless if they're using an AAC device or not. So even if they're already using an AAC device, such as like, sorry, Cassidy, was that you that asked the question about your learner with the AAC device?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. So even if your learner has an AAC device, they're going to fit somewhere still under these vocal profiles, whether it's going to be a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6.
Cool. Thank you. That was really helpful. I know you might go on later on. Maybe I was jumping ahead.
No, that's okay. Nope, that's all right. No worries at all. Yep, we will get there. But yes, every single one of your learners, when you're doing this assessment, is going to fall under one of these vocal profiles. Okay, so within your vocal profile 1, so we're going to went over what the goal is. So next, what the Essential for Living focuses on is the action plan to help you reach that goal. So what are you going to focus on with your learner to help them reach that goal? Okay. So the action plan basically for a vocal profile 1 is to convert those controlled repetitions. So like we were talking about with that kiddo where maybe they have a few spontaneous mans in their repertoire, but pretty much everything else you have to get them to verbally imitate what you're saying. You want to get your overall action plan is to really focus on taking those verbally imitated words and converting them into your mans and getting them to spontaneously manned for items. Also your tax, so focusing on your tax and getting them to be able to tact items and maybe descriptions, as well as doing some intraverbal with them too. All right. So anybody who focuses, or sorry, anybody who falls into this vocal profile 1, what you're going to do is you're going to focus on the spoken words with them. Okay, so if they're in a vocal profile 1, continue working on spoken words with them, that verbal language. They're not necessarily going to need maybe a alternative method of speaking at this point. Okay. All right, so that is your vocal profile 1. Is everybody clear on that? Any questions? Nope, you're good. All right, we're moving on to your vocal profile 2. So with your vocal profile 2, these learners exhibit a variety of understandable words or phrases, but only immediately after hearing the word or phrase. So these are your learners, unlike that may engage in echolalia. Okay. They may make occasional articulation errors, but still can be understood by both familiar and unfamiliar listeners. So basically, they repeat everything that you say. But if I were a novel person going in, or a novel instructor going in with this learner, and I'm having them repeat something back to me, or they repeat something back to me, I'm like, and I can still understand what they say, and they might fall under this vocal profile too. All right. So within this profile, they can exhibit both controlled and uncontrolled echoic responses. So basically, they might repeat, your uncontrolled is they repeat the directive back to you. Your controlled echoic response is they don't repeat the directive back to you. Okay. Your controlled echoic response is, I say car, and they say car back to me. That's your controlled echoic response. Your uncontrolled echoic response is I'm like, what do you want? And they repeat back to me, what do you want? Instead of actually giving me what it is that they want. Then this learner would fall under your vocal profile 2. All right, is that pretty clear? Can you guys think of some clients that you have that fall under your vocal profile 2? Yeah, okay. So with your vocal profile 2, your goal is to acquire a repertoire of requests. So again, just like your vocal profile 1, you want them to continue working on obtaining a very wide repertoire of commands. All right, and same thing, focusing on your tacts, also following directions. So your listener responses and answering questions. All right, so now your action plan when it comes to your vocal profile 2, to be able to reach your goal is to first convert the uncontrolled repetitions into requests, and then convert these same uncontrolled ones as we teach additional request names or descriptions and answers to questions. So what you're going to do with that, what that basically means is you're going to convert the uncontrolled ones, your uncontrolled echoic responses, into requests. Okay, once you've converted those into requests, then you can focus on, okay, let's get them to more tact items, name items, describe items. But you want to get the echoic responses that they give you. You want to turn those into actual commands first, or actual requests. Okay, and with this vocal profile, again, their recommendation is to focus on spoken words. Continue focusing on those spoken words with your learner. Don't necessarily have to choose an alternative method of speaking for them at this point, but to really focus on their verbal language and their form of communication. Any questions? Nope. All right. Vocal profile 3. So your vocal profile 3 does not exhibit controlled or uncontrolled repetition. So we'll occasionally say words or phrases that may include errors in sound production, but still generally understandable to familiar and unfamiliar listeners. All right. So they have a limited number of spoken words and phrases that occur infrequently across situations. inconsistently within the same situation, and rarely as spoken word repetition. So basically, they may engage in scripting or delayed echolalia. With this learner that falls under this profile, they don't exhibit a lot, or if any, really, like spontaneous mands. But the next thing you know, you turn around or you hear them actually saying swipe or no swiping, and that came out perfectly clear. That would be, excuse me, a learner that falls under your vocal profile. Number 3. And you can't even really get them to verbally imitate that you ask, verbally imitate what it is that you want them to say. So if I say to Sam, I say cookie, and I can say this 3 or 4 times, say cookie, say cookie, say cookie, and I can get nothing out of her. But then, like I said, 5 or 10 minutes later, I hear her say cookie, say cookie. That's a vocal profile number 3. All right, do you guys have questions about vocal profile number 3? You're good? All right, so the goal with your vocal profile number 3 is to have learners exhibit words more frequently along with repetitions of the same or become aligned with your vocal profile number 2. So basically you want to get those words or those phrases that they can say to become more controlled. So under your control and getting them to repeat that. All right. Once you can get them to repeat what it is that you're saying, then you can take those repetitions and then convert them into spontaneous requests. So, but then they say, okay, well, with these learners, they may not exhibit the tendency to repeat what they hear, or there's no way to ensure that sounds or words occur in response to prompts. So again, we have those learners where you're absolutely trying to get them to repeat what it is that you say, and they will not do it until, like I said, 5 or 10 minutes later, then you hear them saying it. The action plan for them to get to that goal may have to be that you immediately reinforce spoken words. So when they say 5 or 10 minutes later, I want a cookie, that you're automatically going to reinforce them with something that they want. You give it to them right away. All right. You may have to pair and reward spoken words, spoken word requests. So if you do get that spoken word request where they say cookie, you hear them say cookie, and then you tell them say cookie, and then they say cookie, you reinforce it right away. So you're pairing and rewarding those spoken word requests. All right. Rewarding requests and providing opportunities for repetition. So focus on trying to get them to verbally imitate what you say, and again, reinforcing that. But now, in the meantime, for your vocal profile number 3, while you are working on that, you may have to select an alternative method of speaking for them and begin teaching requests if spoken words do not increase after 2 to 3 months. Okay, so if you have a learner that falls under your vocal profile number 3, you would want to really focus on probably an alternative, or basically like a secondary source of communication for them. And it could be a picture exchange communication. It could be a picture board. It could be sign. It could be an AAC device. But you really want to focus on selecting and then confirming the alternative method of speaking for them. All right, are you guys clear so far? Any questions for your number 3? All right, number 4. So your vocal profile number 4 exhibits controlled responses, but these responses are not understandable at all, especially to unfamiliar listeners. So we have quite a few of those learners who may try to say something back to you, like say a word or a phrase back to you, but it isn't quite understandable. But now you have people who work with these kiddos every single day, and they understand what they're saying, which that's great. But if I were to go in as someone who is novel to them and try to get them to say something and they say it back to me, but I have no idea what they are saying, they would fall under this vocal profile 4. Okay. They may exhibit frequent sound substitutions, deletions, and distortions. Okay, so they have a lot of sound errors or articulation errors. They may only repeat a limited number of individual sounds. So now our goal with vocal profile number 4 is to improve the extent to which their repetitions are understandable. So here the goal is to focus on getting whatever words or sounds, even you may have to even start at sounds with them, but getting them to a point where they are understandable. And that's where you want to focus. Okay. The action plan is to secure the services here. So if you have a person or you have a learner who is vocal profile number 4, you really should be getting an SLP involved in this at this point. Okay. And what the SLP will do is they want to assess the extent to which a learner is aligned with this profile is understandable. Okay. Do they really fit at this vocal profile number 4? So consult with the SLP on this. All right. And try to estimate the extent to which the learner's production of sounds and words could be improved. So as you're consulting with the speech language pathologist, get their input as far as is this a skill that this learner can even acquire? Okay. So if you do not see improvement, so if you're working on trying to get them to say these sounds with accuracy, but you're not seeing any improvement within 6 months, or you have the speech language pathologist that says that it's not going to improve, then you should also be selecting an alternative method of speaking. Okay, but also going off here for your vocal profile number 4, like you still want to select an alternative method of speaking for them, in addition to focusing on these sounds. All right, question on your vocal profile number 4. Vocal profile number 5. So these are your learners that exhibit a limited number of word approximations that are not understandable to both familiar and unfamiliar listeners. All right, so with this, in order to use spoken words for this vocal profile to get them to the point where they're actually using spoken words, you would, or this learner would have to produce many sounds and word approximations frequently. All right, they would have to be able to echo those sounds and word approximations. They would have to produce words that are understandable to unfamiliar listeners, and they would have to repeat understandable words. So the action plan for you to meet these goals is to select and maintain an alternative method of speaking. So that's really where your focus should be on a learner who fits under this vocal profile number 5, is selecting and maintaining an alternative method of speaking. So once you've selected the alternative method of speaking, you're going to teach the request. So that's where you want to focus with a learner, is teaching your request using the alternative method of speaking. Confirming that selection. So basically how you confirm the selection is, are they using it? Like, are you seeing progress with their ability to request for things? If you are, great, you've confirmed your selection. Like that's the alternative method of speaking that they want to use. And also maintain that method of speaking. So ensuring that they are continuing to use that method of speaking as their form of communication. Okay, any questions? All right, so vocal profile number 6. So your vocal profile number 6 is your exhibits noise and a few sounds. So these are primarily your learners who are nonverbal. They may grunt, whine, or squeal. So in order to use spoken words as a primary method of speaking, learner must produce many sounds and word approximations frequently. So it's pretty much the exact same as your vocal profile number 5, except your learners do not make any or just primarily make noises or sounds to request for what it is that they want. They would produce words that are understandable to unfamiliar listeners and also repeat understandable words. So with this, your action plan is to select and maintain. And again, just like your vocal profile number 5, maintain or select and maintain an alternative method of speaking. So here you will teach the request using the alternative method of speaking. Again, confirm the selection and maintain that method of speaking with your learner. All right. And those are your vocal profiles. Do you guys have any questions on your vocal profiles? All right. I kind of feel like those were more clear than actually some of the skills you were assessing on the quick assessment. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, let me pull up here our assessment tool. Have you guys already done this part? Under your vocal profiles, has anybody skipped ahead and done it?
Can you?
Sorry, guys, that was horrible. Sorry, Lauren, go ahead.
Is it doing it still?
No,
Okay. I didn't skip ahead, but I actually had ran this part and the other part that goes with it back when I first took on this case, one of my kiddos, when I first started. I know I talked to you about this already. So I did finish that with Omar. So yes, I've done that one.
Okay. Anybody else?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Could you say it again?
Oh, I said, is it anybody else? No? Okay. All right. Well, your next assignment then, guys, I'm trying to pull this up, but my internet is being slow, or my computer. I'm not quite sure which one. Okay. Can you still see me? I've lost my Zoom.
Yeah, I can see you.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Sorry, guys. I've lost my Zoom on my computer. I'm trying to pull it up. There we go. Okay. Share my screen here. All right. Can you guys see this? The Essential for Living scoring sheet?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so your next assignment, should you choose to accept it. Sorry guys, it's Friday and I have a really bad sense of humor today. And I'm hungry. All right. So you are just going to fill out the vocal profile for your learner. So you're going to choose one for your learner, which profile that your learner falls under. And then Also, if you have not done it already, do your alternative method of speaking if they are currently using one. So under your alternative methods of speaking, criteria for that is number one, has no formal method of speaking, and is using one or more ineffective methods. So if they don't have anything and they should have an alternative method of speaking, but they do not, score them as a 1. If you are currently working on, or if you've introduced an alternative method of speaking, like you're testing it, score them as a number 2. Have they been using an effective alternative method of speaking for 1 to 6 months? Have they been using an effective alternative method of speaking for more than 6 months? So this is your criteria. So go ahead and do your alternative method of speaking, or sorry, your vocal profiles for your learning, and then the alternative methods of speaking area on your assessment.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What if they did have an alternative method of speaking, but they're mainly using spoken language now? Would you still fill one of those out?
Yes. Well, are they using it now as a backup?
Kinda.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Then I would, if they have it, if they are still using it as a backup, then you will still want to do the assessment for your alternative methods of speaking. So if they are at the point that they would be at a number 1 under your vocal profile, and they are not using any type of alternative method of speaking, it's all spoken language, then you're still going to assess that.
Well, mine specifically for Joey, I put him as a 3 for spoken words,
Okay.
but he does still have his device and he will use it if he wants something and maybe doesn't know the word for it.
Yep.
Or wants to spell it out for us. He'll do that on his keyboard on his device.
Okay. Yep. So you put him right at a vocal profile. So he's at a 3. You said. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, because he does a lot of scripting.
Okay. Yeah, he'd probably fall under your number 3. So you can still have a vocal profile 3, and it may be like with your learner that yes, they still need an alternative method of speaking as like a secondary source of communication for them while you are trying to align them with your vocal profile number 2, and that's okay. So if he does still use it as a backup, then I would score it on there. Any other questions? Got one in the chat. Let's see. Yep. We have another one. Client, she uses a device and is vocal. Yep.
Tiffany, I was just going to say, if anybody has questions about where their kids are at in terms of alternative methods of speaking, that their speech pathologists are going to be a really great resource.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of assessment when we decide whether or not a kid is going to use a communication device or not. So I think if anybody has any questions, or especially like Joey, I know he's kind of an interesting case. Brenna, he does both.
Yeah.
I think your speech pathologist is going to be a really great resource in filling this out, even if they're not part of this particular group. I think they would be really helpful in, going through this together. So, and some of it's billable. So woo woo, do that.
Yeah. Yes, especially, I would say too, when you are really, just like it says in the Essential for Living, or kind of like what we went over for some of the vocal profile, what was it? 5, 4, 5, and 6, really getting like your or your learner's speech language pathologist involved. And I would really get them involved from the beginning when you're doing this, even if your learner is a vocal profile 1, because I can tell you a lot of, or actually, no, I'm like pretty much all of this, like when we're talking about alternative methods of speaking and looking at your vocal profiles, a speech language pathologist / BCBA actually contributed to most, if not all of it. So, you know, if you were doing this, I mean, and even if you're not doing it with your learner, I think it's always great to get your speech language pathologist involved with working on communication with your clients, because they have a lot of great ideas on things that you can work on, or things that your staff can work on with the learners during their session to help increase communication with them. Also trying to determine, actually, you know, is picture exchange communication the right way to go for my learner? I'm like, or would going straight to an AAC device be better for them? So again, I would highly, highly recommend getting your learners speech language pathologist involved right from the start, especially when you're working on this. And
More of a question for Becca. Are the rest of the speech team gonna get like trained on this, or at least familiar with it? Because I see that not everyone is here.
Yeah, right now we're just piloting this with myself, Hannah, and Nicole, but the rest of the team, the plan is to have them trained in this once you guys are all trained as behavior consultants, and Stony, of course. And then the plan is to trickle down to the rest of the group, but Hannah and Nicole are your guinea pigs right now for speech and OT. So they're a great resource, but then like Tiffany said, I think you want to get your child's speech pathologist together on any of this if you're doing the vocal profile. So, but yeah, the goal is eventually, yes, they'll all know how to do it, but we're just the pilot group.
great question, guys. Any others? Nope. All right. Well, go ahead, like I said, and do your vocal profiles for your learners, do your alternative methods of speaking for your learners. Get practice really getting fluent with this with your other learners, because our next Skinner meeting in 2 weeks, we're going to go over your alternative methods of speaking and kind of how they recommend that you, on which alternative method of speaking you should choose. Because there is like a little graph. So there's some skills that you assess, like if your client has or your learner has these skills, and then you kind of go into the book, and there's like some matching that's involved with a little like plastic here that you align that up. And basically what that does is it helps you determine which alternative method of speaking might be more effective for your learner. All right. Well, if you guys don't have any other questions, then I will see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thanks, Tiffany.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.